Welcome in, everybody, to Grind Time, powered by Full-Time Fantasy and the FFWC. I am joined tonight by the man, the myth, the legend, Toyota Hall of Fame inductee, John Rozek here. And John is I mean, you talk about tough as nails, a player that you see in every single draft that you enter. We were talking off air about this, John's like, I join a room, I see Rozek's name. Every time we're in leagues, Rozek's name's at the top of the boards. And there's a reason why you were inducted into the Toyota Hall of Fame here. And I just want to say thanks for coming on the show. I am excited to have you on. I mean, this man has $500,000 plus in earnings in the fantasy football industry. And he's going to rack up that total even more because he's about to win the FFWC playoff challenge. No jinxes, but it's going to happen. So just want to say welcome, John, to the show. I appreciate you coming on. And how you doing?
Good, Billy. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate coming on the show.
So before I got some icebreaker question here, but I forgot one to throw it on here. What's your day job? I mean, everyone has a day job and then they jump into CPA.
Yep, public accounting.
So no transferable skills with fantasy then?
Not at all.
Do you think that that's given you an edge in terms of analytics and analyzing numbers and being able to kind of decipher patterns?
Yeah, I definitely think that's helped out, particularly earlier on. In the last, 5 to 10 years, people have, more and more analytics has come into play on there where, like I said, 5 to 10 years ago when some of these high stakes leagues started, I don't think as many players were looking at it that way. So the internet has been a great equalizer.
Yeah, information is just available at everybody's fingertips now. I think that the grind itself is the most important factor now, where it used to be, I think, players who were just more knowledgeable had a huge advantage over the field. But as information is more readily available, quicker information as well, you're starting to see it just breaks down to people's work ethic inside these leagues, and as well as being able to analyze numbers, I think, is a huge part of it. So we have a bunch of people in the chat. You saw Stats Guru. He says, the legend. Good to see you, John. Hopes all is well. 209 more sleeps until the FFWC main event in Vegas. Scott says there he is. And Jose says, great bringing top high stakes fantasy football players. So everyone's excited to have you on tonight. So I sent you over some questions, rapid fire. I want to do these ones just as icebreakers here. Kind of get to know you a little bit more and kind of get a feel for you. So first, whatever you're thinking, just top of your head, I'm going to ask a few questions and give me the answer. Cake or pie?
Pie.
Pie. Hamburgers or tacos?
Hamburgers.
And the most debated topic of like the century, toilet paper over the roll or under the roll?
Over, of course.
Coca-Cola or Pepsi?
Pepsi.
And beer or wine?
Yes, please.
Yes, please. I love that answer.
Well, I probably prefer a good scotch over either one of them.
Oh, I like scotch as well. I like scotch a lot. My beverage of choice is wine. I draft with wine. I'm usually podcasting with wine tonight. Tonight I only have a sparkling water, but
I get the beer out. So
oh yeah, is that a hazy or what is that?
No, it's a local, just a Pilsner.
Little pills. I like pills. And then how long have you been playing fantasy football?
Since 1989.
1989. That's a long time.
Long time. High school players, and the league actually was going until about 5 years ago.
Oh wow! Now, did you guys have to mail in your picks to your commissioner back then?
No, we did the picks live, but we got the results on Tuesday or Wednesday. Or we usually have Wednesday after the paper came out on Monday or Tuesday morning. They could hand do everything, and now it's amazing. And now we were upset when picks our live scoring isn't updated in 0.2 seconds.
You're waiting for the newspaper to plug in data. That's great. What drew you to fantasy football? I mean, what prompted you to start playing?
I forget who it has. It was one of the friends who had the ideas. I mean, I played football my entire life basically through there, so I was always into it and loved football, and it was just another thing to do. And I was always like the numbers and everything side of it, so it was a easy draw.
And then most importantly, because there's a different level between the average, home league and then the high stakes leagues that we're in. What drew you to high stakes, and how did you get your start inside the high stakes fields?
Much like everyone else, I think that started on there is I had done well in the home leagues and everything else. And going back, I think the first one I did was the World Championship, which I think is where WCOFF, which is where most of these high stakes players started way back in 02 or 03. I think the first year was down there, and kind of saw an ad in a magazine or something and said, "Hey, this sounds like a great idea. Going out to Vegas, drafting live with a bunch of people. I've done well. I can take this down." And from there, kept on going. Been doing it every year since.
Now, when you first started, because we have a couple people who are always listening who are looking to get into high stakes, how many leagues did you start with, and then how many leagues do you ultimately play annually today?
Started with one, which is hard to believe now, but yeah, flew out to Vegas, everything else to go do one draft that first year. And then, I thought I did very well the first year. So the second year, I think I might have been 3, but also back then was when they had one draft time. So you literally couldn't really do more than one, and live was the only option. So it's quite a bit difference now and I don't even know the total number last year, probably was, I don't know, 150 or something like that, which is, I've probably done more than I ever have the last couple of years, and probably too many, and we'll cut back. And then I got into too many of the, the online championship type ones that are easy to do over the summer. And then it's like, you get during the grind of the season, it's like, why did I do this?
Yeah, it's like, why the hell would I put myself through this torture? Now I have to set 150 lineups. I have to do 150 teams for waivers. Are those all managed leagues? Are there any best ball mixed in with those 150?
Those are probably mostly managed, and I do some best ball ones on top of that.
Yeah.
So I'm actually hoping for next year to at least cut that in half, if not more.
Are you going to consolidate primarily to higher stakes and get rid of the 350s, or?
Yeah, I'll probably do more of the same number of the main events and everything, and just cut down on doing, I love every format, so I got to do a big number of all the online because they're all so easy to do over the summer. And
man, I'm gonna feel naked in a room when I don't see your name. It seems like every time we're in a room, it's like, oh, look, that two familiar faces. But it's gonna be.
I say that now, and we'll see what happens over the summer.
Yeah, you're gonna be sitting at home and you're gonna be like, I'm bored. I'm gonna do a draft, and then next thing you know, you're in a room. Well, let's. I want to take a look at your playoff team, because right now you are sitting in first. So I'm gonna pull this thing up. Give me 1 second. Let's do share screen. Okay, and get rid of this overlay. And are you able to see that? Should I zoom in?
No, it's fine. I actually have it open too.
Okay. For the viewers, then I'll just zoom in slightly, so I can still manage it. So overall leaderboard, you're sitting first. You have a pretty good lead over. So a couple players in here don't have much going for them. I think second through fourth are pretty thinned out now, and now that we're in the final 2 teams. So you have an 8-point lead over second. But if I remember right, you have quite a few players. So let's take a look at your team. Of course, you're winning your league by commanding, 157-point lead. So you've locked that one in. So you're going to get your $500 from this team. And it looks like you built, what is this? Walk me through your team. What was your mindset when you were drafting these? I know we were in them almost every night together, but walk me through your draft, your mindset, and why you chose to stack these 2 teams.
Yeah, for the design or the playoff ones on here, a lot of times it's you kind of have to see what falls to you. I mean, the overall strategy is you need to build a team that is very concentrated between the 2 teams you think you're going to make it to the Super Bowl. And being at the end of the draft, I just kind of had to wait and see who went ahead of me and who was going to give me what players fell playing on there. I got Cup and Hill is who I took at the turn. Was surprised to see Cup there. I think there's very few drafts he made it to the end. That went on there, and basically I was debating between Hill and Diggs there, and decided that like Kansas City's chances a bit more to go to the Super Bowl than Buffalo, so just went with Cup and Hill, and then from there it's just kind of waiting to see what comes back to you at the end of the 3rd and 4th round.
So it looks like, yeah, you started, just pulled up the board. So you went Cup, Hill, then you grabbed Mixon, followed by T. Higgins at Beckham, Brady and Stafford, Higbee, Jefferson, Akers. Akers surprised me. I did not think he was going to come in and have this massive workload 6 months after tearing his AC or his Achilles. Then you got the Rams defense and the kicker, and then Uzama and MVS. Now, when you started seeing this board fall, did you start thinking, hey, I'm just going to start stacking? I'm going to start stacking Rams here, and then I'm going to, alternate between Kansas City and Cincinnati, or did you just say, you know what, I'm just going to kind of risk it for the biscuit here, and I'm going to go with an odd team to move forward and take the Bengals?
Yeah, basically, as I said, with these leagues, you're kind of waiting to see who comes back to you. And once, I mean, Mixon falling to the end of the third round was pretty late. So once Mixon and Higgins was there at that point, I kind of decided, all right, I didn't really have a Rams Bengals team. I'm just going to go ahead and build that stack because it's actually looking back, it was relatively easy, particularly with the Rams, because not a lot of all of a sudden Cup, he's the only one that was going really early. So you could be able to throw in a couple of other players and then basically throw on a bunch of Rams players after that. The Bengals are a bit more difficult because usually, by early third, all three of Chase, Mixon, and Higgins are gone. But so at that point, I decided that's what this build was going to look like.
Okay, I'm going to take a look at the remaining competition that we have live for the viewers to see. So second place here, he's got no quarterback left, so you have a leg up on him there. He's got no running backs left. He's got no wide receivers left. So yeah, he's completely out. So you have second place cleared. Third place, you are up by 21 points. Third place has Stafford still. They have no running backs. They have Cooper Kupp and Rams defense. So you have everybody. You have all three of them. So there's no way for him to catch you. And then Frankie here. Frankie has no quarterbacks, no running backs. Wow, he went one running back. That's kind of ballsy. Chase, and that's it. And then that's it. So you have him cleared. And then, I mean, unless Chase goes off for like 100 something points, which is not going to happen. But then you have my draft partner, Dave Hubbard here, who's in fifth. And he's got Burrow, Akers, which you have as well, Jamar Chase, Higgins, Boyd, Odell Beckham, and then Bengals kicker. How many points are you up on Dave? You had Dave by almost 47.
Yeah, and basically with that one, it's going to be Burrow, Chase, and Boyd versus Stafford, Kupp, and Beckham.
Yeah,
and,
I like
and then I got a couple other players on top of that. So I mean, if I think it was what you mentioned in an email to you. I mean, if the Bengals go off and Chase and Boyd go off for a ton, I could still get caught there. I mean, looking on here, I think the main competition might be Bronco in 10th place and Noah's in 14th. Those are two teams that have the most players left that aren't common players with what I have.
Yeah, I'm going to take a look at mine now too live. So Stafford, you have, I got Sony, unless Sony does anything. That's not really helping me. Cooper Kupp, Jefferson, and then I got both kicker defense. So a lot of the same players. So looks like you have it pretty secure. It looks like Dave and I are going to be fighting for second and third, I think, maybe I think my 13th place team wasn't bad either, but
yeah, I think it said Bronco and Noah's the 10th and 14th, the other ones that I have a big stack with there. And I'll knock on wood here because it's with these leagues I know enough. You never know.
Yeah,
because I actually won this a few years ago, and I didn't think going to be basically the same process you just in there. I didn't think I had any chance. So I actually wasn't even paying attention to where the scoring was because I thought there was a team ahead of me that basically was a lock to win, and I had no chance.
And then and then miracles happen.
Yeah, and they got a text from Scott at like the beginning of the fourth quarter and says, "Hey, you're going to take this down?" And I was like, I was in another playoff contest that I was that close to going with them. I was like, "What are you talking about?" And when I looked at it, I'm like, "Oh, well, hey, that's great."
Well, I don't want to say congrats. I don't want to jinx you, but it's looking pretty secured. So happy for you there. You were in a lot of drafts together, so I'm happy to see you take it down. Let's go ahead and run through kind of your process. So high stakes process. You're one of the best in the world. I've been wanting to have a lot of different high stakes players on. Not sure if you got to see some interviews that I had with Glenn, with Nelson. So a lot of similar questions here because everyone has a different process. Everybody has a different way of doing things. So for those of you who have been watching every show, you might hear a lot of the same questions, but it's designed that way so we can get some diverse answers. So I'm going to start from the top here and ask you, you've said it briefly earlier in the summertime, but when do you start drafting and how does your draft process usually start?
Usually end up doing some best ball drafts around now. I haven't done any yet this year, but usually it's kind of off season time and everything else starting now, and do some dynasty leagues as well. So there's some activity that's going through now, making the picks, and then the redraft leagues usually kick up maybe the end of May is when I've started doing some of them, and let them go over the summer depending on how things go. And then it's always probably first second week of August is when more of the main events and everything else kick in, and start doing a bit more concentrated with them.
And so are best balls like your way that you're just gauging ADP, where a player's going early in 2022? Are you deciding from there, hey, I'm going to do more early drafts because I like a value on a certain player, or I like where some players are going? Is that at least change the way that you're approaching drafts heading into the summer at all?
They do a little bit, but best ball leagues are different. So the format where players go is always a bit different than what happens in a regular redraft format. So it does to some extent, but I have fun on those. And it's like you have to get in just the right draft for the right players to fall. And I always seem to get in the drafts where the player doesn't fall anyway. So I'm like, it didn't matter.
Especially when you get in a room with sharp guys, like you're so used to getting a player in like round 4, and all of a sudden he goes like the end of round 2, and you're like, what the hell, right? Like what?
Right. And often you get a lot of them, like a lot of players that in the early drafts are ones that are doing a ton of leagues for the most part.
Exactly. So you said this earlier. You went to Vegas, you did your one draft, and back then you couldn't do multiple at once. How many drafts, like in peak draft season, how many drafts are you doing at once? How many screens do you have pulled up? Like, walk me through this.
I've already got 3 screens pulled up all the time on there. I've tried to limit it to 2 at a time, which can get done pretty comfortably. A couple of years ago, I did three drafts at one time, and that was too much. But the 2, I mean, every once in a while, you might, a pick here or there. I wish I'd go back and would have made a different one, but 2 is pretty manageable when you get the multiple screens, and I can even do it with like a single cheat sheet, and I've got it ticked off of there and just run through both of them.
And so you're doing these drafts. Do you have a specific draft philosophy? Do you believe in hero running back, zero running back? Is there any like, what's your main draft philosophy?
Again, a lot of it, I tend to let the draft come to me and let the draft kind of tell me what my philosophy is going to be. And I think the key is really knowing that if you go hero strategy, zero running back strategy, running back heavy early, what does that mean for the rest of your draft? And adjusting your picks going on. I think you can win with any of the strategies. And my favorite's probably closer to the hero, taking that one stud running back to anchor on and then kind of ignoring it for a while. But sometimes the draft dictates something differently, and you kind of have to go a different route. And I think that's the best thing people can learn is adjusting on the fly. Once you start, you've got a great plan going into the draft, and as Mike Tyson once said, you have a great plan. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, and some of the drafts are the same way.
Yeah. I absolutely love that quote because it's so true in fantasy football. Like you're going in saying, I'm going to get this guy, I'm going to get this guy, and then he goes way earlier than you expected, and you have to be able to adjust, right? And be able to to be fluid, right? Or as Bruce Lee says, is be water, my friend, right? And so this has been kind of a highly contested topic on Twitter lately. He's zero running back. Do you think that this strategy is warranted? Do you think it's a winning strategy? You said anything can win. In your years of success, would you say that zero running back has been a profitable strategy for you?
Yes. Like I said, definitely won leagues. I've made playoffs. Leagues on there a lot of times. It was particularly, a little while ago, you always draft near the end of the drafts. You almost had to get the advantage of the people that were up front drafting running backs. And again, like I said, it's, the zero and the hero is really your first 4 to 6 rounds. And really it's, how do you fill in after that once you decide what you do up front?
That's the key, everybody. For those of you who are trying to attempt these zero running back builds, he hit the hammer on the nail. It's what you do after those 6 rounds that is going to, determine if your team is actually going to be competitive or if you're the rake. And if you just continue down this slippery slope and just take zeros at the position for running back, you're going to be the rake, right? But if you're able to fill in with some, usable pieces that are going to have meaningful timeshares that are going to be, whether it's a 3rd down role or a 2 down role, you're finding that back that's going to fit your team. Zero running back can be profitable, but it's how you build your team after those original rounds. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, and that way, when I first started out, I think my first few drafts, I was, old school. I think I started off 3 running backs in a row, and some of the really high stakes ones I still did well with those. So that's why they can all win.
They all can win. Yeah, it breaks down to the grind, right? You're looking at your moves that you're doing in the season, your waiver wires, your roster decisions, right? You look back at some of these leagues, and like we missed the dominator in one of these by like 3 points, and you break that out 16 weeks and it's nothing, right? And so
Definitely.
it just shows you how important all those start sets are on a week-to-week basis. So I agree. You can win in many different ways, shapes, and forms, but ultimately it comes down to your start sets and your roster moves and maneuvering through these teams. So let's talk about back to your draft philosophy. Are you changing your philosophy when you're playing like in a tournament, you're playing in best ball, you're playing in, a 10K or 20K or 5K leagues? How are you approaching those drafts differently each time?
Yeah, I guess I'll break them down between best ball and the others, because the best ball draft definitely is a different approach. You're going to go quarterback earlier. You're going to take more quarterbacks. Other players are going to get pushed down a lot more than what you would in a redraft league. So it's definitely kind of a completely different strategy once you get past the first 2 or 3 rounds. In terms of a confined league versus the tournaments, same thing there. I'm gonna call it a bit more conservative, but look for a little more consistency in the confined league than what I would in the tournament league. Look at it a little bit differently. Where a lot of people look at it, hey, I just want to win my league, and then we'll see what happens in the playoffs. Where I'm drafting most of my teams of what can they do in the playoffs, and I'm just hoping to make, just getting the shootout. Whether that's winning the league, getting in as 4th place, it's almost like I really don't care. I'm kind of building the team for that playoff push.
So you mentioned the word consistency. Is there a certain, at being a CPA and a numbers guy, is there a certain um, statistic or analytic data that you like for consistency over just, visual film and production?
Well, I think a lot of the sites put out there, it's, they put up the weeks like their wide receiver one. I look more of the, what weeks were they startable players, put up numbers that's either wide receiver 3 or better, maybe even, wide receiver 18 or 30 or better, middle of the third and up in terms of consistency versus the guys that are going to put up either 30 or 2.
Like Tyler Lockett's, right?
Yes, which but those guys I love for the tournament team, right? Because that's what you need to take it down at the end.
Okay, I like it. Players, let's talk about targets. Is there any how are you identifying your draft targets every year? Is there a metrics that you're looking at? Is it film based? Are you going purely off statistics, feel, draft room? Walk me through that.
A little bit of all of the above, which is a cop out, but it's all true. I mean, in terms of a specific type of player, usually for me, a lot of targets are kind of your second year running backs that kind of break out at the end of the season. They finally get their opportunity, like a Jonathan Taylor coming into this year, which everybody had very high. But kind of those guys down there look for new opportunities. New coaches coming in town, I'll take a look at. As when new coaches get hired, kind of go back and take a look at their coaching philosophy, because many times they can go in and a tight end may not have been valuable on a certain team previously, but they bring in a coach where, hey, they've 20% of their passes go to the tight end, so even though it may not be a great player, then that player is probably going to have a lot more opportunity than maybe what some other people would think.
Can you think of a coaching change this year or a scheme change that is going to fit that mold for you with a player?
At this point, I don't know. I have not looked at it at
I
all.
say I put you on the spot right now. I just kind of threw that one at you. Yeah, I there's a couple running backs I like that are still being drafted late. Like I'm looking at, it's not a coaching change necessarily, but looking at the Jets and what they were able to do kind of down the stretch and winning games, and we are in year 2 now for that back as well. So I think that we have a potential there for a breakout. And there's a couple of the backs I really like too.
Target. Yeah, I think he'll be a target. He was for me this year as well, and kind of the same concept. We figured he wouldn't do much early on, but second half of the season, he finally get his opportunity. It turned out he didn't get his opportunity until like the last quarter of the season, but it's looking good for rolling into next year.
Yeah, Michael Carter was pretty damn good. I wasn't on him like beginning of the year, and then I started becoming more on him, and then I was underweight on him, but still had some shares, and he started doing well, and I liked him. But I think this could be a much better year for him. Let's take a look at how about fades. You're looking at players. How are you identifying those fade targets? What kind of metrics are you looking at in those?
Yeah, for the fades, same thing. Well, obviously this early year I don't have any fades in particular, but it's more a type of player. I'll probably fade Derrick Henry, and I'll probably be wrong on him for like the fourth year in a row. And here, when he does 2,000 yards and he scores 20 touchdowns, but typically, it's a running back that's very touchdown dependent that doesn't catch passes. I'm going to fade them regardless. Like a Nick Chubb. I rarely have ever drafted him just because he doesn't catch passes, and that's what we need in here. I'll tend to or fade wide receivers that change teams. They're oftentimes when they go to the new team, they really struggle that first year, regardless of how great of a player they are. And then the other type of player that I'll typically fade is kind of that mid-career, late season breakout. It's like the Miles Gaskins a couple of years ago and stuff like that. So we had very little of him going into this year because every once in a while I'll be wrong about a player and miss out on someone having a great season. But, I've kind of found it more often than not, they struggle to keep that success in the following year.
Scott has a question here. He says, "Hey John, good to see you. Fab continues to be an area that we see new players struggle with. What advice would you give to those players?"
I think that was one of the things on there too. I balance between trying to keep the money for later in the season because you tend to have people that drop players too early. So it's nice to have um, the extra money to outbid them when, like last year, there's people I know myself dropped Higgins early. Jefferson was dropped early in a couple leagues last year. So it's nice to save some cash to pick those up. But if you go in with a team where you've done zero running back or something like that, and there's a major injury, or like Elijah Mitchell the first week this year, where it's a significant team need, don't be afraid to blow a good chunk of your money on that to fill a very big need that you had for your team.
How much did you spend on your Elijah Mitchell teams? I always like asking the question.
I only got him on one or two, and I got him for less than 500 on the
Oh
teams
yeah,
that I got him. So I didn't bid really heavy on there, mainly because I like his talent. I just thought there's so many mouths to feed over there that it was going to be hard for him to continue that.
understandable. It was more of like a keep people honest bid, right?
Yeah, and if it turns out, hey, I got him, hey, all right, great. And
Now, when you're doing Fab, are you doing like one bid across multiple leagues? Are you adjusting based upon need in leagues? Walk us through some of your process with Fab for these new players and how you tackle each league individually.
yeah, I kind of go through. I kind of almost have two sets of bids that I put together. Kind of each need week. I'll call them first ones the needs, where you just have to kind of you're filling bye week players, you're filling injury players, like that, and going out and making sure you get all those filled, and then kind of the wants and the opportunities. And those are the ones that are probably going to be more consistent across all the leagues. Looking at a Elijah Mitchell, for example, or some other breakout player after week one. I'd throw those across all the teams or an opportunity. Look out someone drops someone that shouldn't have been dropped in the league. So I'll throw out there and kind of fill in all of those. And then the other key that I have, particularly get later on the season, is kind of looking out a couple of weeks. There's a lot of times you always hear people say like, "Oh, well, this guy, Jerk McKinnon, a couple of years ago, or whatever, certain running backs get Miles Gas, whatever, get picked up, and you go to their leagues and say, well, someone already has them, and well, it's because usually it's one of the top higher stakes players picked them up 2 weeks ago. As they're kind of looking ahead for those guys that have the opportunities. So it's kind of almost three buckets they get to, and unfortunately, with the teams I had, a lot sometimes you don't necessarily can get to that last bucket as often as I would like.
One second, I lost all audio. I apologize. I can't hear anything for some reason. My screen just went black and came back on. I'm going to try to adjust some settings real quick. Are you able to hear me? Can you just nod if you can?
Yep, I can hear you.
You can. Okay. Let me see where my headset went. How about now? Can you say something for me?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
No. Okay.
That didn't change anything. I can hear you fine.
I have to leave the room and jump back in. I apologize. 1 second. Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hear you. I'm going to ask a question here so you can have something to talk about, and I'm going to try doing one more thing real quick. Hopefully, I don't have to end this show because that would suck for not having audio. Go ahead and list me through like 3 to 4 mistakes that managers make in season on an annual basis that you see either new players make or seasoned players make. And then while you're answering that, I'm going to try to fix this sound issue. I apologize.
All right. Yeah, let's be the last minute here talking to myself about this one. No, I think I've already mentioned a couple of them on there. Probably one of the biggest mistakes I see is people giving up on players too soon. So, someone that's in a good opportunity, a rookie, someone that's got the opportunity to have success and then drop them early on. Like I give an example, even I fell prey to that a couple times last year. I dropped Higgins early on and turned out to be a big mistake at the end of the season. But certainly, there, particularly people that aren't used to playing with the 20-man rosters and having the deep rosters are kind of the what's available on the wire is a little bit different than the players that you want to cut. For that one, the other one to some extent, which I think is for some reason getting more popular now, is overthinking your lineup decisions. So far too often you have someone that's a wide receiver 1 or 2, and suddenly you're going to bench Stephon Diggs because he's going up against Ramsey or some other top cornerback, and your other wide receiver 5 has this incredible matchup against Kansas City or something else. So I'm going to get tricky and go with this spot, and more often than not, then you'll see Diggs go off for 40 and the other guy gets shut out. So it's, there's the mantra of start your studs, and to some extent, if you get an equal option, maybe you don't do it, but it's the players that get too cute with that, I'll say. And then the last one, which I'd mentioned earlier as well, was waiting too long to pick players up. Oftentimes, the one's just looking for, hey, here's what I have coming up this week, here's what I need, or hey, this guy's due back from injury in a week or two. I'm going to go look and see if I can pick him up now. And as I had said, particularly in a league with, a bit more experienced players on there that, more than likely those players are already going to be gone and they were picked up a couple weeks ago. So it's, kind of, those are probably some of the 3 biggest ones I've had. So I don't know if you heard any of those, but well, now I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
Okay. Nothing.
No, I can.
Oh, okay. You're scared. Yeah, I don't know what's happening. Okay. That's never happened before. Okay. Let me get caught up on the chats here. So we have Kev says we can hear you, Billy. Awesome. Thanks. Kev says I missed the beginning, but do you have a certain platform that you prefer?
I play all of them on there, and I find they all have their own unique challenges and skill sets to them. So I kind of like them all. I think the FFWC here and kind of the NFFC ones are the ones that are the closest to your home leagues, with a little bit of a couple of tweaks to them. But
one of the reasons I love FFWC is just like the amount of like in league prizes that we have over here, right?
Yep.
You have like the Dominator is just unmatched across the board, and from a volume player like yourself, and correct me if you have something different to say or believe in, but I play not always for the prize up top. I'm playing to be profitable, and I'm playing to maximize my return. And when I can win $10,000 in a single league, that's like 10th in one of these, major fill tournaments, or 5th in some of these, so to be able to take that home in an in league prize, to me, is just, it's unmatched in any other site.
Yeah, I definitely like it. And particularly when I think they made a change a couple of years ago where it's, kind of had to do an outright win in the win categories. And, earlier on, a couple of times had teams that, would finish second or tied for best record, second in points, and you get, not much for it. So
Ham sandwich, I call it.
It's great when you have it on there. It looks like you said, it makes up for, hey, you take 1 in 5, you get the Dominators that pays for 5 more leagues with it. So it's really nice.
It really is. Yeah, I call it a ham sandwich when you get like a grand back after taking, like 3rd or 4th place. You're like, oh, thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Jose said, "What's your Twitter handle?" Off air, he said he doesn't do Twitter much, but do you want to give out your Twitter handle?
I'm sure. I think it's Rozek 73, but that's how often I use it to look at stuff.
Always here to always fun to hear from the greats. So I agree. It's always nice to have someone like Rozek on to be able to pick his brain. So again, I want to thank you for stalling for me while I was fixing those sound issues.
Not a problem. Hopefully they came through okay.
Yeah. I'll have to go back and listen to them because I didn't get to hear them. So I'm going to have to go back and rewind it. So what are the, so for new players playing here, we have a lot of players that listen that are jumping into high stakes. What is for you, what's your main advice for these players who are looking to get into high stakes or are just getting to start doing more volume? What advice do you want to give to them to make them more successful?
The first one, which seems very basic, but I've been in leagues where people don't have but know the rules, which I know it sounds crazy, but particularly across the different options, even with the FFWC here, we've got that extra flex spot, which does change things a lot, and just those little nuances can make drastic changes in a player's value. So it's probably the biggest thing I've on there. Don't draft a QB early. It's regardless, they fall the 4th or 5th round, let them go. Maybe if they're there in the 7th round, then maybe you pop for Mahomes or something like that, which may seem crazy because some people that aren't in the high stakes, but that happens, right? It's they just fall because everyone's kind of got the same mindset.
Kev says, "What sites are you using?" Oh, sorry. Go ahead before we go to the next one.
The other one, which again sounds odd, but have fun. It's big things. Don't be intimidated by everyone that's in these leagues all started in the same spot, and anyone can compete.
Perfect. All great advice. It's funny how you mentioned the site rules. And even in the highest of high stakes, it's overlooked, right? People miss a little nuance, and I was guilty of it myself last year in a high stakes league. I missed a bit of information on fabs that were extended in certain areas, and I was just like, holy, I can't believe I missed that. Right? I went and misbudgeted my fab because I missed that nuance. So it happens to even some of the best of us, and so just really look through those leagues, especially when you're playing on multiple platforms. It's easy to do, right? When you're playing at 3, 4, or 5 different sites, it's very important to sit down and reread the rules even in mid-season. Wheeler says, "What sites do you use for research and news?"
All of them. I mean, the FF Toolbox, I go, get a lot of this stuff that's on there for weekly rankings, and Advanced Go there is one of the main ones to go through. I'll be old school and go to some of the football guys, Fantasy Pros, Fantasy Alarm, a number of. So that's the place. The one place that I really don't go is most of your mainstream sites. I'm not going to ESPN, not going to CBS Sports, and stuff like that. The advice every once in a while, I'll take a look at some of those rankings because a lot of your newer players and stuff like that, that's what they're used to. So that's what they'll bring. So sometimes I just take it as use it more information for, hey, here's where some of these players are thinking.
I call those fish bait.
That's where the fish are going. And like I said, I remember looking back again, this goes way back, old school, and one of the larger leagues from the original, and what had one guy drafted his starting lineup in a row. So he had his kicker and defense, everything else by the end of round 10. Round 11 started taking his backup quarterback and going all the way on. And this was, I think, maybe a 10K league, and he won it by a landslide. So you learn not to laugh at what any draft looks like because you just never know how it's going to turn out.
It's so true. I remember I was at a home league one time, and I was drinking pretty heavily. Everyone was. And I'm blanking on his name. Who was the tight end in Denver that had 14 touchdowns that year with Manning? Why am I blanking on his name right now? You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yes, he became a third or fourth round pick in leagues.
So this guy took him in round 1, right? And I remember laughing. And then he followed up with Gronkowski round 2. And we're not in tight end premium in these leagues, right? It was just a home league. And I think combined, those two players had 22 touchdowns or something, like 23 touchdowns. And he ended up winning the league. And I'm sitting there looking back at the draft board, and I'm just laughing. I'm just like you said, you never know, right? And you may think what's going to happen, but you just don't.
Right. Someone drafted 5 running backs. Hey, you got no shot, and they end up winning the league. And I mean,
that's it. It was Julius Thomas, I think, was the name.
There you go. No, yeah. Thanks, Kev. That first name.
Yeah. So let's talk reflection process. I think this is the piece that myself that I am looking to fine tune more as not only a high stakes player but also an analyst is kind of looking through my previous year, looking at the mistakes I made, the success I had. What does your reflection process entail, and how are you getting better every year as a fantasy player?
The thing looks back. I mean, I will go back and look at previous drafts where certain players went that end up being, huge breakouts. You can look back of, well, why didn't I take this player, whatever. But I'm looking more at the process than the player itself. So yeah, I could have taken, like this year, everybody could take a Cup in the third round. But looking back on it, going through the process of in the beginning of the season, there's X number of receivers you had that you thought were better. You're following the process where you think was better. He falls down in here. So I think it's important to ignore that outlier player and just kind of follow your process. What was my thinking when I went through and made this pick? And did I make a solid decision? And, the more often you focus on that, your outcomes are going to be a winning outcome more often than not.
I like it. It's like we talked last week with Nelson, and same thing. Just have a process, right? Making sure that you're able to analyze your process and fine tune it, and make sure that you're improving every year and not changing your process based upon missing something or an outlier, like you said. So speaking of Cooper Kupp is now the wide receiver 1 consensus overall in these early drafts that I have seen. I've done about 10 so far in February. And he's going in between like pick 1.02 and 1.04 on average. Do you think that the industry is overreacting on, the monstrous year that he had, or is the high draft capital warranted for his success in 2021?
I think a little bit of both. They're clearly overreacting, and I think everybody's looking at those things. Well, hey, he can do 75% of what he did last year, and he'd still be the wide receiver 1. And I've fallen prey to that. Many people have. Again, since they're looking at the situation, I don't see a lot changing in terms of targets for him as long as he stays healthy. Stafford loves him. They've got great chemistry in the route, so I don't see any reason why he can't finish the wide receiver 1 again. I mean, obviously, he's not going to have the same type of season that he previously had, but I could easily see 25+% reduction from what he's done this year and still be a top 3 to 5 wide receiver. But it's just very difficult for any position, be it wide receiver, running back, or any of them, to repeat their years as like the wide receiver 1 or the running back 1.
Give me 3 names that you think have as good or a better chance of dethroning him as the wide receiver 1 for next year.
I'm think about this ahead of time. Devontae Adams, assuming he stays with Rodgers, Adams certainly can. Hill can. I think Stephon Diggs can come back and have a year with him. A lot of people love A.J. Brown. I don't think he gets enough volume to, be in contention with that. I can see Metcalf having a shot at it. Jefferson, a shot at it. Jamar Chase could have a shot at it. So basically, I think almost anybody that's currently ranked as a wide receiver 1 has a chance of dethroning him as the overall wide receiver 1. I mean, it's very deep. I think that first round, first wide receiver 1 tier.
Okay, so Chase right now is been going typically as wide receiver 2 off the board. Jefferson typically wide receiver 3, and then we see kind of a mixture of either Tyreek Hill or Adams kind of there shortly after. Are you more team Justin Jefferson, or are you more team Jamar Chase?
Jamar Chase, strictly for the quarterback right now.
Yeah, the offense a little more explosive.
They're more explosive offense. They've got great chemistry. They're going to throw the ball a ton. We think that Cousins is going to stay back in Minnesota. Maybe not. We don't know who's going to be throwing him the ball. And, with some of these top receivers, you find out that quarterback can make a huge difference. And no matter how talented they are, and not being able to finish up there, Debo's the type of receiver that I tend to miss out on, and because I won't draft him as high as what he's going to go, and I'm going to continually be wrong on a player like that, and it's my weakness.
As much as I love Debo the man, I'm not going to own a lot of him this year. He's going at like the 1-2 turn right now, and it's just too rich for my blood. Even though I'm a Niner fan, even though I love him, I just I'm going to look at value elsewhere. Like somebody like Ayuk this year now, who's been going in like the 6-7 turn. now presents himself as a value when we saw him start kind of getting more of that target share down the road when Debo was finishing as a wide receiver one without getting any targets. Just baffles me, right? But
Right, exactly. It's crazy. But
riddle me this: how does a receiver finish as wide receiver one without any targets? But so yeah, I agree. Debo is I love him, but it's going to be. I think he was hyper efficient, and it's going to be hard for him to repeat that here in 2022.
yeah, especially if he's going to the 1-2 turn. There's just I would take any of the 12 guys I just mentioned ahead of him, which means I'm going to miss out on Debo. And more likely he's going to go off and be great.
I hope so, because that means my Niners are going to be good. So your CPA numbers guy, do you do your own projections, your own rankings?
I do not.
You do not.
I go and pull off the sites that's on there. I will manually adjust them. I go more of where I think players are going to finish. Not
kind of like a tier break.
Yeah. Down there I can see them, whether it's better than last year, more opportunity. And then I think there was a while back, there's some people that had done of, hey, you think this guy's going to finish as wide receiver 5, here's where his stats are likely to end up. And, which is actually pretty consistent from year to year. The only thing you really miss out on is the true Cooper Kupp, McCaffrey, true outlier, dominant wide receiver 1 overall type season. But you can't project those anyway.
Perfect. Well, I think we made it through my list of questions here. Is there anything that you'd like to add before we wrap up the show?
No. I'm glad to be on here. It's a lot of fun, and always fun to talk fantasy football in February here. So it's a nice change from the snow and everything else we have here in Chicago.
Yeah, diehard time, right? February. Everyone's taking a break, and we're over here drafting, and we're talking high stakes football, and we're gearing up. Next week, FFWC releases the best balls, so we can start entering FFWC best ball leagues next week. So I'm pumped up for that. Oh, I know what I want to do. That's not on the sheet. Give me your Super Bowl prediction. Who's going to win, and what's the score? And the determining factor, like, is it going to be an offensive line manhandling, or is it going to be, Burrow going crazy? Give me your predictions.
I think it's going to be Rams 27-23.
Okay. What's the determining factor?
The defensive line. Yeah. And which one can break through, and which one's going to give the quarterbacks. I think the Rams and Donald are going to give Burrow a little bit more trouble than what they're going to give Stafford on the other side. And at the end of the day, I think that'll be the determining factor. The one caveat through there is if Stafford decides to, go back to being old Stafford and throwing 3 or 4 picks early on.
Yeah, I think it's gonna. Am I frozen on your side? My system's acting up today. Great, this is fantastic. Well, I'm gonna wrap it up before I go ahead.
I'll say one thing on there too. If I would have known you were such a Rams or 49ers fan, though, maybe I wouldn't have decided to come on here being a Packers fan.
Thanks, Kev. I think we figured that one out. I'm apparently having major issues tonight. Well, I just want to say thank you, John, for joining us. I'm going to wrap us up before anything else freezes. Really appreciate your insight as a player and as a very successful high stakes player. So thanks for joining us, and really appreciate you coming on.
Right. Thanks for having me on there. Appreciate it. Look forward to seeing the draft rooms coming up.
All righty, buddy. Everybody have a good night.
All right. Thanks.